Hello and welcome along everybody to another photography show spring shoots discussion. Today we are going to be looking at the Fujifilm X-T4 and I've got video product specialist Carl Hare with me today. Hi Carl.
How's it going? You all right?
Very well. We're winding down for the second day, but we've still got loads to chat about, and you're going to take us through everything that the Fujifilm X-T4 can do. I guess if anybody's watching now, they might have already seen you today because you've been on this afternoon discussing everything Fujifilm, which people will be able to... Go on.
I was just going to say, it's been a long day, mate. It's been a long day.
Yeah. But if anyone missed that and it is here, that's worth checking out, and that should be available on demand at some point this week, and loads more Fuji knowledge from yourself and your colleagues. So what are we going to look at today, Carl?
So I've got a little presentation about the Fujifilm X-T4 and about the new and improved features for photographers, videographers, content creators. I think Fujifilm is a very underrated system for that type of thing. Everyone sort of seems to go to the Canons, the Sonys, the Panasonics because they've got that name in electronics and video creation. So do we, and what a lot of people don't understand is we've got a massive heritage in sort of cinema, broadcast and filmmaking. So hopefully we can shoehorn that into the little presentation about the X-T4 and its features and why you might want to pick one.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say about its video capabilities as well. More and more these days we're seeing people kind of sidestep from either being a photographer to becoming a videographer, or indeed the other way, and merging those skills. And I was lucky enough to have the X-T4 for an afternoon a few months ago, and shot some test video on it, and it was incredible. So look forward to hearing some more about that.
Yeah, it's a great camera, and I say I've got a little presentation to go through if we can bring it up and we can get started and take some questions as we go through at the end. Cool. So the X-T4 brought out sort of over the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, it's been around. Built on the sort of platform of the X-T3 and the X-T2 and X-T1, which came out in sort of 2012, 2013, and sort of coming onwards. The camera has taken the sort of base features and brought them on: new sensor, new processor, new technology, new body, and there's a couple of new features that I'll sort of talk about as we go through the presentation. But this is a sort of lovely little product video that we shot with some photographers doing different things. So for photographers, content creators, YouTubers, videographers, and that kind of thing. So I'll just let that run through, and then we'll sort of go into the actual features. And if anyone's got any questions, they can ask, or we can do questions at the end and talk about it there. So there we go. Let me just go through. So the X-T4 sort of brought in some new features and some improvements over the X-T3, the X-T2, and the X-T system as a whole. So we'll just run through some of those now. The first one and the sort of biggest feature that we've brought across is the in-body image stabilization. We've had this previously in one of our other cameras, the XH1. This takes from that incredible system, and it was the sort of first time we'd ever put in-body image stabilization into a camera, and we sort of tweaked it, made it more efficient, made it smaller, made it lighter, put it in a smaller body, and then we sort of put that into our sort of higher end camera, so the GFX 100, our digital medium format camera. We've taken that and then popped it back into the X-T4, developed it on, made it even more efficient, even smaller, even lighter, to be able to squeeze it into, you know, a body that's smaller than a DSLR. So the IBIS is actually 30% smaller overall from when we had the GFX 100 and the XH1 system. There we go. Which now gives us 5-axis and up to 6.5 stops of stabilization, whereas before we only managed sort of 5 stops with the XH1, 6 stops with the GFX, and now we're eking out that extra half a stop to, you know, help videographers with handheld footage, to help the photographers with slower shutter speeds that are hand-holding the camera. And it's a great advancement in our system, and it's only ever going to get better. It works with a lot of our lenses, so there's a little lens list for you to show you the difference between the stabilization that you would get on the XH1 versus the X-T4. And this one should be the zoom lenses as well. So we can see on some of the lenses that a lot of people have, the 10 to 24, the 16 to 50, the 18 to 55, we're getting a whole stop increase in the zoom lenses, which is nice to have. People obviously buy the zoom lenses for versatility. They're not just shooting with primes, especially the longer telephotos as well. The sort of next big improvement is in the shutter unit itself. So again, that was made smaller, lighter, more efficient, quieter. So for anyone that's shooting wildlife photography, perhaps, you don't get that clack, 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 clack of the shutter going and the mirror moving up and down that you would in a DSLR. If anyone's shooting press work, you don't get that there. And we also have the ability to go completely electronic and silent as well. So we've upped the burst rate as well from 10 frames a second in the X-T2 and subsequent cameras after that up to 15 frames a second in the mechanical shutter. And we have up to 30 frames a second in the electronic shutter as well. So it's a big, big, big improvement for sports, action, wildlife photographers in mirrorless cameras. We've also improved the durability. We've made it more efficient, more durable. So we're now getting 300,000 cycles of the shutter, which is, I believe, up there with the Nikon D5 and D6 and the Canon 1DX Mark II. So you're getting full professional level durability in a much smaller unit. There we go. So we've also been able to dampen the shutter when we've redesigned it, made it more efficient, and it's now 30% quieter compared to an X-T3 and an XH1 that used the previous shutter design. Another big feature for us, and it's been a welcome feature over the years, is the battery. We've improved the battery life of the camera from X-T2, X-T3, which was sort of 250, 300, 350 shots. We're now at nearly 500 shots of battery with the new W235 battery, which was for the X-T4 and the GFX 100S as well. So we're now getting 500 frames, or up to 500 frames, up from 350. So it's a huge, huge increase in capacity, which now gives us with the vertical battery grip and 2 extra batteries, nearly 1,500 frames. It's huge, a huge amount. I've shot weddings, I've shot sports, motorsports events, and it's a welcome change. Going from sort of 300 to 500 shots is huge, but then going from sort of 1,200 to 1,500, 1,600 and more, because the camera is now more efficient. Again, it's a huge bump in terms of performance. The camera is USB-C PD power delivery compliant, which means we can now charge the camera and the battery inside the camera in as little as 3 hours with a PD charger. Comes in the box with a cable. 2 batteries in the grip and 1 in the body can take as little as 5 hours to charge all 3 batteries, which I come from Nikon shooting with D4s and D5s, taking batteries out, putting them in chargers. Took sort of 6, 7, 8 hours for 1 battery, and you'd have to have multiple chargers, where I can charge all 3 in the camera with the grip attached via the USB-C connection as well, which is a welcome upgrade and a little bump into the future with the USB-C. So talking about the new film simulation, so we've had Eterna, which is our videography film simulation based on an actual film that we brought out for cinema in the sort of, I think it was the 70s, mid-70s, early 80s. And it gives that wonderful sort of cinematic look. And we've now improved that with the bleach bypass, which is a classic look. It's one I use quite a lot. I'm using Eterna now to film this. It's great for filming. I have to tweak it very little. It's got that real filmic, very good tonality, lovely highlight roll off. It's just a lovely film simulation to use. You can see it's sort of less saturated, but you still get lovely colours. They're a bit more muted. It's a bit more vintagey looking. It's lovely. Okay, so it really does help you tell that story. We've obviously shot lots of videos, promotional videos and things with lots of directors and photographers and DPs in the video world, and it's a welcome addition. It means that you're editing less, you're spending less time color grading for the video side of things. It really helps time and helps you be more efficient as a shooter. So the next big sort of improvement that we've brought across to the T4 and subsequently back to the X-T3, because they use the same sensor and processor, is the autofocus system. So we improved that and did a firmware update for the X-T3, and it really has helped with things like the eye detection autofocus for tracking your subjects. This has been a big part of our sort of ongoing questions with our engineers and the guys back in Japan. To a lot of people say, well, why isn't it as good as Sony? Sony's got great autofocus, Canon have got great autofocus, and now I think with the X-T4 and the improved film simulation, we're 99% of the way there. So you can see here with the car shot coming straight at you, hard contrast, harsh light, stuck with the car really well. And we'll continue to do these upgrades and firmware upgrades as we can make it more efficient, and the coding, things like that. So we'll certainly be looking to do that in the future. So improved movie functions. We've now got to the stage where we're shooting 4K in 60p. So it's a 2 times slow motion effectively straight out of the camera. And with the X-T4, we were actually able to increase the frame rate at 1080p full HD to 240 frames a second. So you can actually get 10 times slow motion straight out of the camera, not having to put it into your software. It literally plays as a 24, 25, 30 frame rate base time frame and plays the slow motion over that as well. So that's a really good addition for anyone who's creating content, B-roll, product. product videography. There we go. So with the 4K 60p high-speed frame rates, you do get a little crop on that as well. It just crops in the sides ever so slightly. You get a 1.18 times crop and a 1.29 times crop in 4K 60p, and a 1 and 1.1 times crop in 4K 30p. We do have the ability to have a fixed 1.29 times crop across all of the frame rates, so it won't change your angle of view, field of view, if you're changing lenses, changing subject size, which is a nice addition, so you don't have to worry about that in post, reframing, resizing your frames. We're also utilising the touchscreen on the back of the camera, so it means you don't have the click of the buttons, which is nice. We can control ISO, shutter speed, aperture, white balance, and audio settings via the touchscreen on the back of the camera, which is a nice addition too. And connectivity for shooting movies, pretty standard these days. 3.5mm mic jack, which can actually be used as a line jack as well, so you can go out to an audio recorder, mixing desk, things like that. We've got a HDMI connection, micro HDMI out, so you can actually record straight into an Atomos external recorder, or any other external recorder really. We can do line and external mic switching as well, and we've got Cinema 4K, which is a 17:9 aspect ratio rather than the standard 16:9. We also have the ability to shoot 10-bit internally in the H.265 codec, and 8-bit in the H.264 codec as well, so you have the flexibility for whatever you need. Bringing the sort of slide to the end really, if I go back one actually. Okay, you guys can see that on the front of the camera we've actually got one of our cinema lenses. We have a range of cinema lenses for various different cameras, but specifically for Fujifilm we developed the MK range, sort of 2018, 2019. So they're full manual focus cinema lenses that come from our sort of broadcast cinema heritage. So normally people would pay sort of 10, 15, 20,000 quid for a lens for a cinema production for an Arri Alexa camera or Sony Venice. We've now brought our technology down into the filmmaking content, people using X-T4s and X-T3s, and we've brought our heritage in terms of lens manufacturing and creation down to sort of the content creation level, which is great because a lot of people want smaller, lighter cameras, but then they have to put this monstrous, great big cinema lens on the front. So we decided to bring that down, and it's been a great addition for DPs, rental houses, content creators, short filmmakers to have a parfocal cinema quality lens at a sort of a cost-efficient price range, really. So there we go. That should be the end of the slideshow.
Thanks, Carl. That was great. Right. I'm surely feeling the need to upgrade my X-T3 quite soon. It's just the I mean, just things that Fuji have added, like like the picture profiles. They're just incredible. And on that note, we've had a few questions come in from some of the viewers. I'm just quickly glossing over them here now, but one that's come up a couple of times with the film simulations. People are asking. A couple of people have asked basically, will they ever get encoded into the raw files that come out, or will they only ever be on video or JPEGs?
So what you've got to understand with raw files, especially for photographers, raw is raw. So you're getting the raw data off of the sensor. So that gives you the latitude and flexibility to go in and edit your pictures as you need. However, we have with our little sort of, I don't want to say partnership, but cooperation with Capture One, you do have the ability to go in with a Fujifilm RAW file, a RAW file, that's, let's say, shot in Eterna film simulation, and it will actually come up on the screen on your RAW file. Whereas in Adobe Lightroom, that doesn't happen. I'm told that's an Adobe Lightroom sort of back-end problem. But if, like me as a photographer, I shoot RAW and JPEG anyway, I generally use the JPEGs more than the RAW files unless I really need to eke out as much detail as possible. So I'm then editing my 30, 40, 50, 60 megabyte JPEG that has the film simulation in it anyway.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at the RAWs and you sometimes spend 5 minutes editing it to look like the JPEG, and I just think, what did I do that? What did I do that for?
Yep.
You bounce it down to a JPEG and spit it out the computer and post it anyway, and for quite a while now, I've just been basically working with the JPEGs that I shoot because they're ready to go. Okay, great. Yeah, I think that pretty much answers that. Because someone else is saying a similar thing. How do they get past to the editing, and how do they end up in Lightroom? But I'm pretty sure you've covered that in what you just said there. So we've got Ari who's saying other systems have good animal eye autofocus. Is that something that you're thinking might be added in later?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've had lots of feedback on, especially with the Sony A1 and Alpha 7 range of cameras having that, and now the Canon and Olympus cameras even have animal eye autofocus. It's something that we're looking at, something that we've taken back to the engineers. I don't know if it will ever come to the camera, but it's definitely something we're looking at.
Great. Couple more. We've just got couple techie ones here. One from James. Hi, I'm just wondering what the real-world dynamic range of this camera is for filming, and also how do the 4K 60p H.265 files edit on Premiere Pro? Do they need to be proxied and things like that?
Yeah, great question, James. I always proxy my H.265 files if I'm using Premiere Pro, just because it's a much less processor intensive to do it that way. I've actually stopped using Premiere Pro for that reason, and I've gone over to using Final Cut Pro. That plays the H.265 files perfectly in 4K, not a problem. I've even had other file types at a lot higher resolutions play straight outright as well in that. So that's what I use. But yeah, there is a bit of a lag and a bit of a buffer in Premiere Pro. I'm led to believe by the engineers that that's an Adobe problem. What was the other question, Alistair? Sorry.
There was a couple more. There's one just kind of general. A chap called Darren is saying, is there any easy way with the Fujifilm X-T4 to quite quickly switch between, say you're doing a portrait, then you're doing a landscape? So things like turning off the IBIS, turning off the face detection, can that be easily done?
Yeah, another fantastic question, and one that we've probably glossed over in that sort of presentation. I actually, whenever I'm shooting from stills, different types of things, I actually go in to use the Q menu a lot. So there are lots of options in there. I think there's up to 16 different options you can customize between film simulations, focusing modes, autofocus, etc., etc. So if you have an X-T4, it's definitely worth exploring the custom Q menu options.
Yeah, and they're ones that you can obviously customize and switch between, very, very quickly, depending on your setup. Hopefully, if you've gone out to shoot a landscape, you won't get sidetracked by having to shoot a portrait immediately. But it's good to know that you've got that option. So Alan has said, Hi Carl, I shoot dance and performance. Do you think the X-T4 focus and tracking system would work well in low light with mixed light sources?
Oh, great question. Yeah, dance and theatre work is really, really challenging. We have got a couple of guys that are shooting X-T3, X-T4s for dance and theatre work. So yeah, no worries at all. The trouble with mixed lighting and low light autofocus has always been a challenge. And we've sort of improved that and improved the efficiency of it with the X-T3 and the X-T4 with a new focus in. So I don't see why not.
There's only one way to find out, really. Buy one and give it a test.
Yeah, and if you're looking into buying one, that's another great little segue in. Is we do have a free 48-hour loan system from Fujifilm-loan.com, and you can have the camera for up to 48 hours for free. That's excluding the delivery times. And if you want it for longer, or you want it for a week or 10 days or whatever, you can pay the extra to have it for the extra time. But it's definitely the best way to try it out, is to have it for a couple of days, have it for a week, test it, get some lenses, try it out, put the pictures on your computer, and sort of see the difference, really.
Absolutely. I've made use of that myself a couple of times, especially when you're deliberating over a couple of lenses you've got your eye on. Just being able to have them in your hands for free before you purchase is great. We've got one from Paul. As a stills pro, I have to have a backup body. So for interchangeability, I bought two X-T3s. What am I losing now? What am I losing for now by refraining from upgrading?
That's
Key differences between the 3 and the 4.
Yeah, so the sort of main difference is the in-body image stabilization, which you won't get in an X-T3. We can't transplant that across the cameras, unfortunately. The bigger battery, so a bit more battery life. The improved shutter, so it's a little bit quieter, a bit more dampened. But in terms of things like autofocus, color profiles, film simulations, ergonomics, they're very, very, very similar. Autofocus, nigh on identical. So it's the physical features. In stabilization, if you need it for shooting low light, handheld, slow shutter speed shots, or handheld video. Battery life from sort of 350 to 400 shots up to 500. And the that's about it, really, mate.
Well, that's plenty there to switch. I mean, I've had them both at the same time, and I mean, the battery capacity alone is a pretty big deal, really.
It is when you're talking mirrorless cameras and everything being on at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Just very quickly before we let you go, just going to check I've not missed anything crucial for anybody. Are you pointing to catch? Okay, so given the problems that you mentioned with Adobe, and this is a guy called Derek who also doesn't want to subscribe to Adobe, are you pointing to Capture One for Fuji editing?
For stills photography, 100%. I swapped over to Capture One probably in 2015. Not full time, just to see the difference between Adobe and Capture One. And I print a lot of my pictures big, sort of A0 plus, and I notice a huge difference in the tonality of the colouring, the noise. We worked really hard with Capture One in 2019 to sort of get the best out of it for our files, whereas Adobe, they have their way of doing it. They have their version of our film simulations, our noise reduction, etc. And that's not necessarily the best way to work. Whereas Capture One, you can get Capture One for Fujifilm for free as a trial, not the full suite of options. But I would download it, have a play, print some photos, and ultimately see what you think is best for your photography.
Yeah, that's it. I think there's a few people mentioning, what they do, and just seeing your brief explanation there of what the X-T4 is capable of, saying that they think they should probably switch because it would suit the thing they're shooting. That's it. I mean, it's a great little system. Like you say, there's the opportunity there to take it for a couple of days, see what you think, and go from there.
Yeah, it's well worth checking out. Fujifilm-loan.com, Fujifilm-X.com. Check out the spec, check out the camera, grab the camera for a couple of days and try it for yourselves.
That's it. I think that wraps up everything nicely, Carl.
Cool, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was great.